Brett Sockled here, helping you make every class Catholic. I'm back on the road. I'm here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Today I was at Holy Family Classical School. It's attached to the cathedral here in Oklahoma. It's actually a school that was founded by St. Catherine Drexel, so that was a pretty cool thing to be a part of. Couple ideas I want to share with you that came out in our workshops today. As we were working through thinking of certain things that we're responsible for teaching in the next weeks and months, and how we might approach those from a Catholic point of view. Lots of great ideas. Just two I want to share with you. There was a teacher who had to teach Hitler's rise to power in 1930s Germany. And one of the questions that arises for students in a situation like that, lots of different historical situations, is would I have behaved differently than the people at the time? And it's very easy for us to imagine that, of course, we wouldn't have been as silly and naive and whatever as the people from this time in the past when they made decisions that we think we wouldn't make. The teacher said, "Well, hindsight's 2020. It's pretty easy to judge things in the past when you're not in it." Even the teenage boys didn't know that phrase, "hindsight is 2020," but they knew about Monday morning quarterbacking, right? That kind of got it across. But as we were talking about that, we said, pay attention to the liturgy on Good Friday, right? The Gospels are brilliant when it comes to exploring and exposing mob psychology, right? So on Palm Sunday, the same crowds that say Hosanna to the King of David, those are the same people who on Good Friday say crucify him, crucify him. And but with the liturgy putting those words in our mouth, we're invited to reflect on what we might be complicit in our own day. It's very easy to judge people in the past and think we would do better. Of course, odds are we wouldn't. Not that many people at that time didn't go along with it, right? There's something that happens in mob psychology, and we're less susceptible to it if we understand it. And so there's history and there's psychology and there's theology all tied up there. So that was an interesting conversation. Another teacher said, "Well, I'm teaching Beowulf." And so one thing that's interesting in Beowulf is of course the virtues of the main character, right? He's brave and he's loyal and all these kinds of natural virtues that are sort of recognized across human cultures. And this is where we sort of found something interesting. When we look at non-Christian works of literature like Beowulf, and Beowulf's really interesting because it's one of the only sort of complete pieces of literature we have from pre-Christian Europe, right? So we get this picture of this culture before its encounter with Christianity. And there's lots of really good things that people from across human cultures recognize, including a willingness to die to protect one's family or one's community or that sort of thing. And it's recognized as a noble sort of self-sacrifice, right? And in our discussion, we said, well, so Jesus recognizes this, right? Jesus says a good man might die for his friends, right? That's a thing that on the natural level, humans achieve as a moral good and is universally recognized before Revelation, before the gospel, as something praiseworthy, right? But then Jesus says, but no one's going to die for their enemy, right? And that would be an interesting question, right? Beowulf is noble and brave and loyal and self-sacrificial, all good things. Would Beowulf die for his enemies? And the answer is unequivocally no, right? And so you can see a clear difference between the literature and mythology and whatever of the world, which affirms genuinely good things, and the gospel, which affirms those good things, but also goes a shocking step beyond what is on offer in human cultures and stories and mythology. So that was one interesting. And then another interesting thing that came up in Beowulf was the idea that Beowulf's enemy, right, Grendel, is not human. And because he's not human, he can be a kind of depiction of pure evil. But when we have a human villain in our story, we always want to know why is he like that, or why is she like that? What happened to this person, right? So supervillains need a backstory. You need some explanation for how they ended up being that way, because we recognize innately that humans are good. And if they are a villain in a story, something must have gone wrong somewhere. But if you create a non-human villain, you can make them the kind of thing that is just inherently evil, right? And that's kind of what happens in Beowulf. And so the teacher thought, well, maybe an assignment could be that the students have to write a short story, and they have to choose a villain in that short story, and the villain could be human or non-human, and they could make that choice and then explore why. What is it? What are the advantages to having a non-human villain in your story? And what are the advantages to having a human villain in your story? And how would that play out? And so I thought those were just really interesting insights. I love this stuff. I love sitting down, and none of this is prepped, right? I didn't know we were going to talk about Hitler's rise to power or Beowulf. I asked them, what do you have in the doc? What are you going to be teaching in the next little while? And let's start exploring it with a series of questions I give them to see what kind of connections we might find and be able to make in an organic, authentic way with our students. And those are just some that happened today here in Tulsa at Holy Family.